Hi everyone. I am doing just a brief overview of some challenge that I want to start at the beginning of 2025. I myself am going to begin this on Monday, December 30th. That's when my next brand new workout schedule begins. I know it's a couple days prior to New Year's, but I'm going to start it that Monday. Feel free to join me on that Monday, or if you want to start on January 1st, 2025, or if you'd like to prefer to start the Monday after on the 6th of January 2025, that is fine as well. Or if you just happen to stumble across this video at some point in any day of the calendar, feel free to start it whenever. This is a animal-based diet. Now, what that means is you're primarily going to be getting protein from your animal sources. So we're talking about beef, your ruminants like beef, deer, lamb, sheep, goat, your monogastric animals such as chicken and pigs. And with those specifically, you want to make sure that you're getting the pasture-raised pork and the pasture-raised chicken. So you don't want to be consuming pork and chicken that are fed corn and soy. With them being monogastric, that means they've got one stomach like us. We are monogastric animals as well. Their bodies cannot break down the corn and the soy and the grains that they're getting in their feed and detoxify it. So the quality of the meats, the quality of the fats in those meats is not as great as if you are getting the pasture raised. That's what the PR means, pasture raised. The best is getting your grass-fed beef, grass-fed, grass-finished. Go to your local grocery store, you can find it. If not, you can talk to the butcher at your local grocery store. So those are primarily the meats you want to consume. We also want to look at organ meats, and you probably want to throw up right now just by me saying that. But organ meats are some of the most nutrient-dense just foods on the planet that we can eat. So I'm talking about your beef liver, your beef heart. There is some brands out there. One is called Force of Nature Meats. I am not an affiliate of that or a paid sponsor of them, but they are a wonderful company. They do have grass-fed beef that also has grass-fed liver and heart ground into it. You don't really taste a difference between just normal ground beef. That is one option. Or if you do really like liver, you could just go get liver. Also at your local butcher, you could ask to have your ground beef and ask them to grind up some liver and heart with it. Typically the butchers do carry the organ meats. If you're lucky, they primarily throw them out because no one ever asks about them, and they don't really keep them up front in the glass because they are a little unsightly to look at. But if you ask them if they got any behind the counter, they might even give it to you for free, and it's also super cheap. You can get a pound of it for $5, $6, $7. Also, along with that, we want to consume some bone broth. You could either just buy cartons of bone broth. I prefer the beef, but you can do beef or chicken. And you can also just do a collagen supplement. There are many kinds out there. Choose one that you really care for, preferably one that is not flavored. So just an unflavored beef collagen. And then we've got our wild caught fish. You do not want the farm raised stuff just because the farm raised fish, the quality of the fats, the quality of the proteins, it's not as great. Do a quick Google search for farm raised salmon compared to wild caught salmon, and the pinks and the skin are totally different. One looks almost opaque, the other is a deep red, deep pink color. That is the one that you want to go with. And then finally, corn and soy free eggs. So when I go through the egg section at my grocery store, I'm specifically looking for, are they pasture raised? Meaning, are they running wild on the pasture like they should be? I'm looking for labels that do say corn and soy free. And you can tell a huge difference. Like if you take a white conventional egg and crack it open, the yolk is pretty yellow. And then if you find a pasture raised egg and crack that open, the yolk is nice and orange. That is all the beta carotene in there and all the other nutrients and minerals that you want. So that is why we also want the corn and soy free eggs. So that is kind of what to eat, and that's going to be the main base of your protein sources and your animal fat sources that you're getting. Now, The low toxic. These are totally game, like you can go all in on these. And we're going to start first with your raw local honey and maple syrup. So both of these are wonderful sources of carbohydrates. You might be like just screaming at me right now, but yeah, but like the sugar content and this and that. I'll talk more about how much of each that you can have, but it's totally okay to have this. The honey and the maple syrup have different types of sugar molecules in them, so they function completely different than if you had a tablespoon of table sugar and a tablespoon of honey. They're both going to react differently in the body. In fact, there are some studies out there where they put rats on the same diet and same macronutrients, carbs, fats, and proteins. One group of rats got some of their carbs coming from just regular table sugar. Another group got some of the carbs coming from honey. The group that got the honey actually lost fat and burned off fat. And that's kind of what we're all going for. So your raw local honey, maple syrup. When you do the maple syrup, I'm not talking about log cabin that's filled with just garbage and corn syrup. I'm talking about you flip over that bottle and literally it says raw organic maple syrup, or maybe it just says organic maple syrup. It's not going to be $5 or $6 like log cabin. You're going to be spending $15 to $20 depending on the type, but that is free to go. Raw dairy, if you're lucky to live in a state where you can get raw dairy, I definitely recommend it. I know there's all kinds of stuff in the media right now talking about how raw dairy is going to poison you, it's going to get you sick. You're more likely to get sick by eating, like buying a container of salad mix or getting some greens on a burger at a fast food joint. You're more likely to get sick doing that than you are from raw dairy, because you can meet the farmer, you can talk to the farmer, you can find out how his animals are living, and also they are doing testing on their dairy. Now, if you can't get raw dairy, I recommend doing stuff like kefir, yogurt, and the full fat versions, but just the plain, no flavored, no sugar added into those. Now we've got all sweet fruits, all your tropical fruits, all your fruit that grow on trees, and grapes and bananas and papayas and things like that. And you can also do your non-sweet fruits. We're talking olives, avocados, zucchini, pumpkin, squash, cucumbers. Those are all fair game as well to consume. And then we've got our beef tallow, which is just rendered down beef fat. And then your grass-fed butter or grass-fed ghee. All of these are fair game. You can find ways to manipulate these to hit the right macronutrients and the amount of calories that you're trying to hit. But this stuff is all good to go. So now let's talk about a little bit about the medium toxic foods. So this would be what I would consider medium toxic, meaning some of these foods might react differently in someone, whereas they're totally fine. And then they can also cause some maybe eczema or just stomach distress and discomfort. So you kind of have to play around with some of these. I wouldn't recommend doing a bunch at once. After a few weeks, maybe doing something like strict carnivore, introduce maybe, okay, I'm going to have a cup of white rice with my lunch for the next 3 to 4 days and monitor how your body feels. If you don't feel any different, then you're good. If you feel bloated, if you feel sick, if you start noticing you're getting dry patches on your skin, or just maybe nausea or upset stomach, then you can kind of weed that one out and say, okay, white rice isn't for me. So here we can go through some of these that you can try and see how your body responds. So white rice, we got your roots and your tubers. So that's like your yams, your sweet potatoes, your carrots, things like that. Fermented veggies like sauerkraut, artichoke hearts, your herbs, coconut oil, olive oil, avocado oil. With your olive oil, avocado oil, and coconut oil, the reason why in the green section we had avocados and olives are good because you're getting the fiber, you're getting all the nutrients, but then when it comes to the oils, they're just squeezing down those fruits to extract the oils. And you're not 100% sure if what is in that bottle of, let's say, olive oil is 100% like extra virgin olive oil. They could be cutting it with soybean oil. It could be oxidized because it's been sitting on the shelf for months or years. So That's why these olive oils and avocado oils are in the medium toxic group. If you do get those, I recommend getting the ones that are in a dark green bottle. They typically have some type of story printed on the label somewhere on the bottle about the farm that it was grown, the harvesting process, and those are going to be much more expensive too. You're not going to be paying $5 or $6 for a big jug. You're going to be paying probably close to $20, $25. Then you've got your low metal fish. I put the acronym SMASH. That stands for salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and herring. Those are all great. You want to go for the wild caught in a can. Preferably, if you get it in a can, get it in water if you can. A close second would be if it's in olive oil. If it's in soybean oil or cottonseed oil, do not consume those. We're going to get to those in a second, but those are highly inflammatory oils. Then you've got your Ceylon cinnamon. Now, there was a recent study that came out analyzing all different products of cinnamon, and most of them are contaminated with heavy metals. So you just got to be very careful. If you can find a brand that says it's been screened for heavy metals, and that would be the brand I'd recommend to go with. Now, this next section here is what to avoid, and you need to avoid these at all costs. You want to avoid seed oils. So you have the 3 S's, the 3 C's, and the P. You've got soybean, safflower, sunflower. Those are the 3 S's. Your 3 C's, corn, cottonseed, canola. Your P is peanut. You want to avoid those 7 oils. They're highly inflammatory. They're much higher in omega-6s than omega-3s. Omega-3s are phenomenal, healthy fats for your body, great for your heart, great for your cardiovascular system. The omega-6s cause inflammation in your body and cause us to get sick. So we want to stay away from those. Processed sugars. So if anything on the label says added sugar, stay away. Don't even consume that. And then we want to avoid our corn and soy fed animals. Earlier in this video, I talked a little bit about how, like for instance, pigs and chickens that are fed corn and soy, they have a harder time digesting that. Well, cattle, they have the 4 stomachs, but you are what you ate. So if you're eating beef that was fed on corn and soy, you're essentially feeding on corn and soy. Now, I understand that everyone has different price ranges, and if all you can get is conventional beef, because that is what you're able to afford, by all means, that is way better than just going into the drive-thru at some fast food joint 2 or 3 times a day. So find your budget, what works with you. I personally like to go with the grass-fed, grass-finished, but if conventional raised beef is all you can afford, by all means, please do that. That is way better than just going through the drive-thru or getting something that's in a box that you pop in your microwave to eat. Now, here's your high toxic foods. And you're probably screaming at me like, these are all vegetables. We've been taught our whole lives that they're healthy. I still believe that some of these in small quantities can be beneficial. If you consume vegetables, please cook them. By cooking them, you do help break down some of the oxalates and some of the other types of chemicals in these plants that were designed to not be eaten. Think about animals. They have hooves to run away. They've got horns and claws to defend themselves. Plants cannot defend themselves. So all these vegetables have created these toxins within them to make the host that's eating them sick. So that way then it registers to us, oh, I got sick from eating this broccoli plant. I'm not going to eat this if I find this again in nature. Now, fruit's different. Fruit, they want the animals and us to eat them so that way we can spread their seeds, whereas vegetables want to just be left alone. So spinach or any leafy green in general, but especially spinach. Spinach is super high in oxalates. Think about kidney stones. These things form oxalates. They form in your kidneys. And if you do eat spinach, please cook them down and don't just eat a raw spinach salad. By cooking them, you do reduce and break down a lot of the oxalates. Not all of them, but most of them. Your brassica plants. So that's all the cruciferous veggies like your Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, broccoli, cabbage, chard. Those would be all the different types of brassica plants. Beets are also high in oxalates as well. Again, if you do eat them, please cook them. Again, your leafy greens, grains, and for that matter, like any type of grain, I just would not consume it. Not only are there a lot of anti-nutrients in them, they are heavily sprayed with glyphosate, and glyphosate has been shown to cause cancer and other types of diseases within us. And even if it's organic, if their farm is right next to a farm that is not organic, chances are those pesticides are traveling and probably mixing in with the non-organic or with the organic. Then you've got your nuts and seeds. They have a lot of phytic acid in them, and what that means is if you, let's say, eat a handful of pumpkin seeds, the phytic acid, as your body's digesting that, the phytic acid is going to grab onto other minerals and leach minerals from your body to pass through the digestive tract to help keep that seed or that nut intact. So that way then when you do excrete it, then it's able to germinate and turn into a plant. That is why we really don't want to consume nuts and seeds. If you really wanted to, my top 3 nuts and seeds would be number 1, macadamia nuts, number 2, pecans, and then probably number 3, probably peely nuts. Those would be my top 3, just because they have the least amount of phytic acid. They have very good healthy omega-3s. They have a good ratio between omega-3 to omega-6. Then we've got your spices. We really don't want to use spices because they can be harmful to the gut, just with especially like cayenne pepper, things like that can really upset the gut and the gut mucosal layer. Then you've got your legumes. So we're talking about your peas, your beans. They have a lot of lectins, and lectins can cause leaky gut within the body. And all it means is you have one cell wall that outlines your intestines, and these lectins come in, they inflame those cells so the joint cracks the cells open in between, and it allows food particles to pass into your digestive system or into your body, and that will cause a lot of inflammation. Then we've got our nightshades, so your eggplants, your peppers, your tomatoes. Again, those also have lectins in them as well. And then your high heavy metal fish. So we're talking about tuna, swordfish, shark, sea bass, things like that. They have a lot of heavy metals in them. I would recommend, like, if you do consume tuna, maybe once a month, once every other month. If you consume a much bigger fish like shark or swordfish, that's like maybe a once a year thing, just because they do have a lot of heavy metals in them, which then you will accumulate as well. So how do we put all this together? What are some of the different macronutrients that you can do? Well, we have 3 approaches. You can do the animal-based carnivore, which is 0% carbs. So you're just primarily eating just meat. So you're getting 30% of your macros from protein, 70% from fat. Then we've got our animal-based. So this is incorporating a little bit of some of the fruit and the honey and the maple syrup. So you're taking away 20% from the fat and you're adding that to the carbs. So you're doing 20% carb, 30% protein, and 50% fat. And then the final one, which this is one I'm going to be doing myself, at least for the first 2 months of the year, this animal-based bulk. So you're going to be consuming 50% carb, 25% protein, 25% fat. The reason why I'm doing that is I want to give my body more than enough carbohydrates for just heavy lifting, to replenish muscle glycogen. Just FYI, I've been keto pretty much for 5-6 straight years now. So like the past few years, I've been consuming up to 50 grams of total carbs a day. So I'm gonna be shooting for 7 times that. I'm interested to see how my body responds to that. So I'll be keeping up to date with you guys on how it's affecting me. Now, here is how to tell, okay, how many calories should I be consuming? What type of macronutrients am I looking at? So the top 3 rows, what you wanna do, you wanna take your current weight. You want to multiply it by 11 if you pretty much have like a desk job, you're not doing much movement throughout the day. Multiply by 12 if you're kind of on your feet, like I'm a teacher, I'm on my feet, I'm moving around. So I would multiply my weight by 12. 13 if you're like a factory worker that's moving heavy machinery around, if you're a construction worker like you have a very laborious job, that would be a 13. Now, if you are a male or a female, and a male you're 10% or lower, female you're 20% lower body fat, you're going to add 1,000 calories. If your body fat for a man or a woman is above 10% for a man or above 20% for a woman, you're going to add 800 calories to that. I've got an example on the next slide. Now, if you're looking to maybe lean out a little bit, like maybe your body fat is mid 20s or higher or low 20s and you want to get into the mid teens, upper teens for a man. For a woman, if you're in like maybe the low to mid 30% body fat, you want to get to the low 20% or mid 20% body fat, I would recommend starting with this one. So you're going to take your current weight, again, 11% if you're doing like a desk job, you're not moving around a lot, 12% you're on your feet quite a bit, but you don't have a very laborious job, or 13 if you're like a construction worker or factory worker where you're moving a lot of heavy things, using a lot of energy throughout the day. Then if you're a male that has 10% or less body fat, or female that has 20% or less, you're going to add 200 calories to that. And then if you're a male with 10% or more body fat, a female with 20% or more, you're going to add 100 calories to that. So I use my measurements as an example. I'm currently 170 pounds. As I said in the previous slide, I would multiply that by 12 because I'm on my feet quite a bit. I don't have a super laborious job where I'm moving heavy stuff around all day, but I am on my feet. So 170 times 12 gives me 2,040 calories. I take that 2,040. Now, I'm currently 23% body fat. So since I'm greater than 10%, I'm going to add 800 calories. So that's going to put me at 2,840. I'm going to round it down to 2,800 calories even. So what is that going to look like for me? Well, I'm going to have 350 grams of carbs, that's 50%, 175 grams of protein, that's 25%, and then 80 grams of fat, that's 25%. And the most easiest way to do that, let's say you are doing the animal-based bulk like I'm doing. So if you go back to here, 50% are carbs. So if I take 280 and I cut that in half, that gives me 1,400. Now there is 4 calories per 1 gram of carb and also in protein as well. So I take that 1,400, I divide that by 4, and that will give me 350. And that's how many grams of carbs I'm consuming. When I take a quarter of the 2,800, so 700 calories, I divide that by 4, that gives me 175 grams of protein. And then now there's 9 grams of fat, or 9 calories per gram and 1 gram of fat. So when I take a quarter of the 2,800, that gives me 80 grams of fat. That is how I calculated that. So you can do that with any one of these 3. If I was 2,800, I would multiply it by 0.7. I would take that and divide that by 9. That would give me the amount of grams of fat I need. I would take 2,800, multiply it by 0.3, divide that by 4. That would give me how many grams of protein I need per day. Same thing you could do with the animal-based. Now, let's say it's getting close to summer. I want to drop some body fat. I want to get a little bit more leaner, meaner, more shredded. I would do this approach. So I took my weight, 170. Again, I multiplied it by 12. That gave me 2,040. Now, when we went back to here, this one down here is if you wanted to lose some body fat. Now, again, I'm 23% body fat, so I'm higher than the 10%. I add 100 to that, and that will give me the 2,140. I'm going to round it down to 2,100. So I took the 2,100, and I went with the animal-based cut, which was right here, because I'm getting enough fat to give my body more fat so it will burn more fat. I'm giving it a decent amount of carbs. 20% is a good amount of carbohydrates, and then 30% protein. So that would give me 20% would be 105 grams of carbs, 50% fat would be 120 grams of fat, and 30% protein would be 160 grams of protein. And that probably would drop me down to about 160 pounds. You typically want to consume 1 gram per 1 pound of body weight that you want to be. So if you're 200 pounds, you want to be 180, you want to shoot for 180 grams of protein. If you're 150 pounds and you want to get up to 180, you should be consuming 180 grams of protein. So this is a very long-winded overview of this animal-based diet that I'm going to be going on. Some good resources out there for this. Dr. Paul Saladino, he would be someone I would look into about the animal-based. He was strict carnivore for years, and then he started to play with fruit and add that into the mix. And this is some of the stuff that I've gotten from him. So thank you, Dr. Paul Saladino, for this. Also, disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. I am not a certified nutritionist. I'm just some guy on the internet that loves health and nutrition, and I biohack and do things like this. And I've lost 50 pounds doing things like this. So when it comes to losing weight, when it comes to even putting on muscle, I know what I'm doing. I've done it before. And I encourage all of you, try this. Try it for a month, try it for 2, try it for 3 months. The worst thing, you don't see any results, go back to what you're doing before. Best case scenario, you change some of the metabolic markers that you're struggling with. Maybe you have a hard time getting off processed foods. This might be a gateway to get back on the right track. Now, one final thing. If I was to recommend which one to start on first, if you are insulin resistant or pre-diabetic or a type 2 diabetic, your body has a hard time with insulin. Insulin is the hormone that our pancreas secretes when it senses our blood sugar is spiking to allow the cell doors to open up and take in the glucose. When you're insulin resistant or type 2 diabetic or pre-diabetic, the insulin doesn't do a good enough job of knocking on the cell door to open up to take in the glucose. That is why when you are type 2 diabetic, you have to get on insulin injections to put more insulin into your body, because eventually you do burn out the pancreas, because the pancreas just kind of throws up its hands and say, I give up, I'm giving you insulin and you're ignoring it. If that is you, if you've been living a standard American diet for most of your life, if you've been consuming a lot of ultra-processed foods, a lot of sugar foods, a lot of grains, I would start with the animal-based carnivore. Go 0 carb, just strictly animal products, and do that for 2 to 3 months. That's going to allow your body to become insulin sensitive. What that means is when you do spike your glucose and your insulin consequently, then the cells are more receptive to opening up and allowing that sugar in. So I would do this for 2 to 3 months. After that, you can start to play around with the carbs. You do a week where maybe you add 5% carbs, and then 10, and then 15, and then 20. And by doing that, you're going to allow your body then to get used to these carbs right in here. And then the last one, once you feel like your body is just doing a nice job with the carbohydrates, then you could try something like a bulk, or maybe you play around with this ratio here. Maybe you do 40, 40, 20, or maybe you do 25, 25, 50. Play around with it until you find what makes you feel the best. Everyone is different. Everyone responds differently to carbs and fats and proteins as well. But that is how I would start with that. So please keep it locked in here on my channel. Also, another thing too, Signos Health. I have recently got a CGM, continuous glucose monitor, through them. It's been really cool watching how different foods affect my blood sugar. Eating just, for example, like an apple compared to some watermelon. My blood sugar spikes a lot more with an apple than it does with the watermelon. So it's really cool because you can see how a particular food affects you, whereas someone else, they might have a good reaction to that food. So Signos Health, please check them out. I will put my code in at the bottom in the description of this video if you're interested in checking them out to get a 1 month or a 3 month or 6 month subscription. Please use my code to help sign yourself up. But thank you, Signos Health, for the CGM. I'm loving it. It's fantastic. They are a wonderful company to work with too. If you ever have any issues with them, they get back to you right away, and they're just wonderful, wonderful people. So please, I encourage all of you, try this New Year's Day, starting with this challenge, and you will get your health back, and you will start to be a pillar of someone that someone else can come to and ask you for advice. And the more we can get this out there, that this is how humans are designed to eat, this is how we should eat, eventually the big food companies, they're gonna feel it in their wallet, and they will start to make the changes like these types of foods, and then we can start buying those products. But keep it close to the earth, eat things that grow in nature. Last I checked, an Oreo doesn't grow in nature, and if it does, I want to find it because I will eat a whole bush of it. Please keep it locked in here on my channel, like and subscribe, and share this with as many friends as possible, and I will see you all next time.